Hello my dear students, as you know we were studying chapter number 6, the three orders, and in this chapter I had told you regarding the feudalism and the place from where feudalism started. It started from France, and I had also told you that from France it spread or moved to England also, and there in England also feudalism came into practice. So firstly I will tell you how the feudalism moved to England. Students, what was the history of England is that during the 6th century, the two persons, Angles and Saxons, they moved from Central Europe to England and started living over there. And on their name, the name of the country formed, that is England. England is the name formed from Angel land. From this, the name get converted to England. Okay. Now you understood. 6th century, who were living over there? These two persons, Angles and Saxons. They two were living over there, and on their name, on the name of Angel, the name of the place was formed, that is England. Now what happened in 11th century? The Duke of Normandy, as I told you, Normandy was the part of Gaul. Gaul means earlier name of France. See the map which I had shown you earlier also. Here students, in a map, Gaul is here and Normandy is here. Okay. So Duke of Normandy, Duke means student, the highest noble is known as the Duke. So the Duke of Normandy moved crossing the English Channel to England. Okay, and the name of this Duke was William I. He is known by the name of William I in history. And he went to England, and there he defeated Saxon. And after defeating Saxon, he became the man of the land, means he became the king of the land. And he moved, means William I, who was the Duke of Normandy, he moved to England along with 180 nobles. So what he did after moving to England, he had also had the map of England. He placed the map of England before himself and divided the land of England into his 180 nobles. Okay, so from here the feudalism started in England. How? Means William I, who was the Duke of Normandy, he became the king at England, and 180 nobles became his vassals over there. Means the same vassalage system. And William I granted the land to them, to the nobles, and they became the vassal of the king, and they had their own knights, means soldiers, and provided the service to the William I whenever required. In England, it was banned that the soldiers, the knights of these nobles cannot fight among themselves. They cannot fight among themselves. Only the knight can supply, only the noble can supply these knights to the king, that was the William I in the time of the need. Okay, and the same thing which I told you earlier also, the new class emerged over there because of the need of a war. Well-trained soldiers were needed, so the new class which emerged was the knight. Knight means soldiers, and these knights were granted the land from the nobles. Okay, so in this way, the same feudalism system which we discussed earlier in France, that is Gaul, it moved from France to England. So this is the case how the feudalism moved from France to England. Okay, now students, we move to another topic, that is factor affecting social and economic relation. It means that in this topic we will study the process which transformed the system, of the three orders. As I told you, the society of Europe was divided into three orders. So here we discuss what were the factors which were responsible, which changed the social structure, the society, the economy of Europe from the three orders to the present society. How the society get transformed. Okay. So students, mainly we study the three factors which are responsible for these changes. One is the environmental factor, second is land use, and third is the new agricultural technology which was introduced in Europe during the 11th century. So now students, we discuss one by one all these in detail. First come up the environment. What happened, student, during the 5th century? Most of the area of Europe was covered with a vast forest, and only a small area of land was available for the free land was there which was available for the purpose of agriculture. And because of this limited land for the agriculture use, the crop production obviously was less because the less land was available for the cultivation. Apart from this, there was an intense cold climate which was there in England, and this cold climate also shortened the season of the cultivation. The crop season also gets shortened because of this cold climate, because when there was so much cold climate, the land was covered with the snow. That's why the cultivation was not possible at that time. So both these factors, the vast land was covered with the forest as well as the intense cold climate led to a less crop production. And this less crop production obviously led to the shortage of the food. So, but the situation changed during the 11th century. There was a change in the environment. The cold climatic condition get changed into a warm climatic condition. Means the climate of England started becoming warmer. And because of the climatic change, the climate started to become a warmer. There was a long growing period. Means when the warm period expand, obviously the land covered by the snow also, the time period for which the land covered by snow also gets shortened, and the cultivable time period expand, and because of that the cultivation also expanded. So this is one reason, as I told you, the environmental change which led to the change in the social structure. Earlier the crop production was less for the peasant, but now after the 11th century the situation got changed because of the climatic condition got changed. Now students, move to the second topic, that is land use. What was there initially in Europe? There, the peasant used the primitive methods of cultivation, like for doing the for plowing purpose, they used a wooden plow along with the oxen. You know how the plowing was done in the earlier time. In the similar way, it was done in Europe also. The primitive method was used for plowing. The wooden plow was used. It was drawn by the pair of oxen over there. And because of that, and you also know that there was the land, vast of the land was covered with forest, and there was a so cold climate over there. Due to that, the land was hard. And this wooden plow can't be able to turn the soil. It only scraps the soil little bit. And when it can't be able to dig the soil from a deeper side, it can't be able to make the soil so cultivable. And because of this ineffective method, obviously in the early time the crop production was low because of the land used. The technology used for the crop production was primitive. Apart from that, in the earlier time period, ineffective method of crop rotation was used. Ineffective method of crop rotation means if one peasant is having a piece of land, he divides his land into two parts. And what he did, he cultivated the one part of the total land, like this is the piece of land of a peasant. He divides the land into two parts. Okay, this is known as two-field system. He divides his field into two parts and cultivate one field during the autumn season by the wheat. Okay, and leave the another part fallow. For 1 year he did the cultivation like this, and in next year what he did, he leave this land fallow and cultivate on this land another crop, that is wheat. If he want to grow another crop like ray. What is ray? It is a cereal crop. Okay, like dalein hoti hai, like that. In this way, the cultivation was done, and this method led to the deterioration of the soil, fertility of the soil also. So this method was used, two-field method was used, which was also not so effective. And in spite of all these problems, the lords, the nobles were more conscious, they were more anxious towards their profit only. They want to take as much as rent from the peasant as they can, without bothering about the problems of the peasant. Peasants were forced to bought all the land into cultivation, and the primitive methods of cultivation were used. In that situation, it was difficult for the peasant to bought more land area into the cultivation. As the result, what these peasants started to be doing, if they can't be able to follow the instruction of the nobles and noble forced them, then they flew from their land and moved into the forest for taking the shelter. Okay. Apart from that, what they started, they can't resist the nobles openly because they were their lords, they can't do it. So what they started resisting from internally, means secretly. Like they, when the lord asked them to did the cultivation on the land, they spent more time in doing the work on their own personal land instead of the land of the lord. And whenever there was a need of a free labor to be provided, they try to avoid the situation and don't work willingly on the field of law. And all these situations, all these social circumstances led to obviously the shortage of the cultivation of the food grains. And because of all these things, there was a conflict, a continuous conflict between the lords and these peasants. And there was also the conflict between peasant and the lord on the pasture land, means a free land area is there in the at the place, which was considered by the noble as his private property, while the peasant considered it to be the public property. So on this matter also there was a conflict between two. As well as on the matter of the forest land also, peasant consider the forest land to be the public property, while noble consider it to be his private property and don't allow the peasant to use it. And on this matter the conflicts started. So these conflicts also led to the social changes which came in the later part in European society. Okay. Now you understood the two factors. One is the environment, and we discussed also the land use. Now come to the third factor, that was the new agricultural technology. Along with all these changes, the resistance which was provided done by the peasant and other primitive methods which were there. What happened in the 11th century, as I told you, 11th century was the time period of many changes. Like the climatic condition also changed from the colder to the warmer, and many other changes came. One more important change came, that was the new agricultural technology which came in Europe. What happened? Instead of the wooden plough which was drawn by the oxen, the heavy iron tip plough is invented, and it was started to be used by the peasant. And this heavy iron tip plough was so much efficient. Why? Because it was made up of iron, and it can be able, because of this reason, it can be able to turn the soil more deeper. And when it during the ploughing, it was able to turn the soil more deeper, then obviously it increased the fertility of the soil. Apart from that, this is the case of the dead ploughing, in which field the change came. Second change was that of the method of harnessing animal to plough. As I told you, in the plough the animals were used to harness the energy to move the plough. Earlier these animals were used in a way that the harnessing was done, means a belt was tied on their neck, and because of that, when they pull by their neck, they can't enforce more power on the plough. But now what happened is this get changed. Now from the neck, the harnessing was done now from the shoulder, means the belt was laid on the shoulder of the animals, and which led the animal to harness more power, to apply more force in turning the plough. So now the harnessing of the energy by the animal was done instead from neck to that of the shoulder, and this enable animal to exert greater power. Obviously, when animal exert greater power, then the work of plowing was done more faster. Now third change which came was that now in the 11th century, the horses which were used for the purpose of plowing and other agriculture work, iron horseshoe was invented, which was fitted in the foot of the horse, and this led prevent the lax of the soil, the foot of the this prevent the foot of the horses to get decay. By applying this iron horseshoe on the foot of these horses, their foot don't get decayed. This is the third change. Now come to the fourth one. Now in Europe, the increased use of water and wind energy also started to be used. Means the peasant started using water and wind energy for the purpose of agriculture by making the meal, like the windmill, water mill. Okay. In this way, they can be able to harness more energy at a lower cost. But this meal, establishment of the meal is also need a lot of cost. This can be done only by the big nobles, not by the small peasant, because it need a lot of money. Apart from this, all other methods like the iron tip plow or animal harnessing the animal energy from the shoulder, or having the iron horseshoe, this all these things, technologies were cheaper to be used by the peasant. So peasant used these three technologies for increasing their cultivation. This technology was used by the nobles. Okay. Now fifth change which came was the change in the land use. As I told you here, in the topic of land use, two field method of cultivation was used earlier, but now after the 11th century, instead of two field, three field system of cultivation started to be used. What happened now in three field? The total field of the peasant get divided into three parts. Peasant divided his land into three parts, and what he did, he cultivated one part during the autumn season. Okay, just consider during autumn season he saw on this wheat or rape. Okay, any of these. In next spring season, he leave this land fallow and cultivate on this land, and on this land he cultivate pea, beans, lentil, all these things which are the leguminous plant and are rich in protein also. Okay, and also peasant cultivate oat and barley for the use of for using them by their animals as a fodder. So now by this method and leaving this land fallow, this thing give the time to the land to regain its fertility, and obviously the fertility of the soil don't get exhausted as faster as it was there in a two field system. So this is also increase the fertility of the soil, and this rotation keep on following. Like in autumn this field, during the spring this field, and this they leave fallow. In next year what they did, they started wheat cultivation from here, and then pea cultivation here, and leaving this fallow. Okay? In this way the cultivation of the soil increased. Now students, by 13th century what happened? The cultivable land by the peasants shrank from 100 acres to only 20 to 30 acres. Why peasant did so? They reduce their area of cultivation, because in a small area they can use more technology and they can work more efficiently. That's why they reduce their area of cultivation. As I told you, some technologies were costly, like that of the use of the windmill or the water mill. These costly technologies can be used only by the nobles, while other can be used by the peasants also. From 11th century, personal bondage basis, which was the basis of feudalism, the personal bondage, the bondage between the lord and the vassal, started becoming a weak. started weakening, and this weakening of the bondage of the lord and the vassal led to the destruction of this three order system which was established earlier. Because now the economy also started to be transmitting, changing, because now the use of the money is increased so much. Instead of doing the payment to the lord in term of the manual labor, now peasant prefer to pay the rent in term of money. So the use of the money, the one who was having more money considered to be more powerful. So in this way the economic and the social structure of the Europe changed. The changes came in the economic and social factor of Europe in after the 11th century, and these were the factors which were responsible behind that. Thank you.